most people who have an idea, they're scared of marketing, and they think that they have a marketing problem, but they actually have a messaging problem. That's why their marketing isn't working. So if you look at just last week and you were to write down, where did you spend your last time? That's a real big indicator of where your values are. Values are behavior, they're not thoughts. That's really important. At the heart of every brand you admire is a brand that's living their values, period. It's okay to get paid to be you first, because if you're confident, people are attracted to that. And again, confidence isn't about extroversion. It's not about loudness. It's not about boldness even. It's just about you being the most you can be.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Now, before we start, I've got a challenge for you. How do Nike, Puma, Under Armour differ in their marketing? I'm going to give you a second to think about that. Okay, so they all target athletes, right? And they all sell athletic gear, right? Well, not exactly, because Nike targets top-tier athletes only, the best of the best. Puma targets the after-hours athlete, and Under Armour targets the underdog in you. So you might be selling the same thing, but it's really about getting crystal clear on how your brand is different from the rest, and that you're communicating that message clearly. This is the antidote to anyone who's afraid of competition or if you have imposter syndrome. Now, enough said. This is not easy by any means, and that's why brand strategists and copywriters are paid tens and thousands of millions of dollars to change and make companies a lot of money. We've invited Jennifer Kem here, Jen for short. A lot of people call her that. I like to call her Jen. She's the brand strategist and founder of Master Brand Institute, where she helps entrepreneurs get seen, get heard, and paid for who they are and what they know. And she's here today to help us decode how to create your unique messaging for your brand. For more information, you can find her YouTube link below in this video. Hey, Jennifer, how's it going?
So awesome. Hey, Melissa.
We're really excited to have you here because, you have like a wealth of experience here. You've worked for like Fortune 500 companies, Microsoft, Coca-Cola, Kellogg's, and you were actually a copywriter for them too. And you were also like the head of B2B for Verizon, like big companies. And now you've run off and done something on your own. Like, what happened there? Like, why would you leave what people might call like a dream job?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Such a great question. And it wasn't easy. That's the first thing I want to say. Because as an entrepreneur now, and I've been for over 15 years, I like to say that I'm not a spring chicken. I'm a seasoned chicken. And I did have a dream job at Verizon. I was in charge of some of the most important projects. And my last project, in fact, was the predecessor to what is now all of us are used to, which is streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, et cetera. It was called Internet Protocol Television. And I was the person who launched that initiative for Verizon back in the day. And I was promised a promotion after that. And I had these dreams to, have a corner office and, be the CMO or ultimately the CEO of a big Fortune 500 company. That was my goal. That's what I was gunning for. And what happened was that promotion that I was promised, even though now that particular product is literally billions and billions of dollars made for Verizon. In fact, Verizon is a Fortune 13 company.
Yeah,
Right.
I should have had stake in that.
Right. I wish I did. I realized the moment I found out that my counterpart in B2C got promoted over me, even though I had made the company that much money, that I was out of alignment with what I really wanted. Because up until that point, I thought that my highest value or the thing that I cared the most about was ambition, because I was always a very ambitious person growing up. And when I say ambition, I'm not just talking about, money or power. It was really about, I love to solve problems, and I think when you're ambitious, you're motivated by solving problems and cracking the code on things that you can't understand. And for me, I thought that was my highest value. And that's why I worked my butt off so much in the corporate world for someone else. But when that promotion didn't happen, I realized that actually what I was missing was I was missing control of my future, that they were in control of my future. earnings, titles, successes from a career standpoint. And I was like, no, I don't think ambition is my highest value. I think what my highest value is really is autonomy, the ability to control my future. And so I made a hard choice. And I want to again say why it was hard. Think about this. Picture this, guys. I was making $450,000 a year. Okay. I had,
Yes.
I had a corner office with a disco ball in it. And I had a parking spot that said Gen Chem on it. And that parking spot, man, you had to earn that parking spot at the company. And so on paper and in real life, I had all the trophies and the triumphs to say, why the hell would you ever leave this cushy job? Not only that, I was a parent. I am a parent.
Ooh,
I had two young daughters at the time. One at the time was 10 and the other one was 5. And so all the reasons not to leave a job based on society's standards, but it was just burning me inside. So I made a 9-month plan. I didn't quit right away also, by the way, Melissa. A lot of people, you hear those romance stories about people will go, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And they just like say F you to everything and jump off the cliff.
Right away.
And they leave right away. And I didn't feel like I had that luxury to do that. I decided that if I really wanted to be on my own, I need to do it for me, not for anyone else. And in order for that to happen, I said, I got to put aside half of my salary for 9 months in order to be able to still maintain my life. Because I had kids to think about.
You're bold, you're ambitious, but you're smart.
Yeah, thanks. And so I did that. And so it's not some sexy story. I tell people all the time, like, if you want to leave your job and be an entrepreneur, you already hung out for probably over a year. You can do it for another 3 to 6 to 9 months. Figure out what is the money you need to live on so that when you go into entrepreneurship, you're not starving, because that's the biggest thing that makes people quit in entrepreneurship, because they're broke. And so anyway, that's what happened. And from that on, I never looked back, and I've owned my own companies since 2006.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And it's like really hard for a lot of people because everyone's like, you had the dream job, you had the dream, you had a disco ball. I like the way you roll. And you left because of misalignment. I think a lot of people are like scared to make that jump. And so sometimes hearing it for somebody who's made it as has made it to somewhere as prestigious as you have, and leave, it's quite inspiring to a lot of people too. It's like, you shouldn't sacrifice who you are and what you really, really care about in life for money, because you can find your way.
You can. I mean, I didn't know. And I want to reemphasize that it wasn't easy and it wasn't scary. And it was totally scary. But if you can just remember that this meat sack that you were born, your soul is in, it's going to expire, because all meat does. And so therefore you have to truly choose you. And when you do, everything else is going to come into place. So if you're willing to work at it and make the right trade-offs.
It's the choice. It's the choice. The moment you choose you, everything else starts choosing you too, right? It's not like the life. We kind of think life is like chaotic and everything happens to us. But if you shift something, life can happen for you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And life did happen for you. You made your clients like over $80 million with this framework, billions to some bigger companies here. Right?
Yeah, I'm excited. We're going to get to share it with all of the Thinkific community too right now. All the things that they're paying us millions of dollars to consult and advise them on and use this actual framework I'm going to share today, you're all going to get access to it. So make sure you lean in, have your notebooks ready, because it's on.
Yeah. Pay attention here. This is worth a $1 billion. So in all of your experience here, and it sounds like you've had like a wealth of corporate experience, like entrepreneurial experience and consultation as well. What are some ugly real truths that you've come to learn?
I love talking about the ugly, because when you talk about ugly, everything's beautiful after that. If you get the ugly out of the way, right? So I think two that really stand out for me in moving from the corporate world into the entrepreneurial world, which is, they're very different, but there are some best practices that absolutely apply to both. And I actually think the reason 75% of entrepreneurs fail and that's the statistic,
Yeah.
is because they're actually not using some of the corporate experience that they had because they're mad about it. So that's the first thing I want to say as a contextual thing to your question. But looking at my experience and being inside of so many businesses. Oh my gosh. I mean, I've been inside of celebrities' businesses, as you mentioned, corporate businesses, high profile entrepreneurial businesses, and obviously my own. And it's all the same. So there's the good news too. You're not different. We're not, none of us are different. Yeah.
We don't
So
have
that's
to find
exciting,
different frameworks for everything.
Right. But here's the thing. Most people are scared of marketing, right? Most people who have an idea, they're scared of marketing and they think that they have a marketing problem, but they actually have a messaging problem. That's why their marketing isn't working. And they've been working so hard towards building funnels and like doing all these things. And I'm like, your funnel is just basically a software service, right? That carries your message. And so if your message sucks, it's very difficult for your marketing to work. So that's the first thing. Like a brutal truth is like, forget all the marketing stuff that you're learning and instead focus on your messaging. And not only will your audience start to respect you more, you're going to have more confidence in speaking to it. And then the second thing is, I see so many creators, artistic people, people who have an incredible thing to teach, fall into the trap of building stuff that will make them feel like crap later just because they want to make money.
Yeah.
And you like build yourself, you paint yourself in a corner early, and then you don't know how to get out of it. And I want to change that game because if you start out with what you know first and you build from there, you have so many more choices instead of getting stuck in one place. So it's personally why I've been so successful in my entrepreneurship journey, because I don't let myself get painted in a corner. So that's what I hope to help teach you today too, using this framework.
It's also like something is kind of coming up for me too. It's like in this framework, we'll go through it, is like one big part is values too, right? And so when you're building out of your value that's close to you, and it might make money, but like when you don't just focus on like what's just going to make money and it makes you feel like crap, I think that makes people more passionate a little bit in what they're doing. And so it's like your unique message is a little bit quite more authentic to you, right? And
Absolutely.
the more deeper it is with your values, the more happy you're going to be with what you're building.
Yeah, I mean, in this, I call it this push button shortcut world of online business, expert-based business. You don't get into business to get rich quick, right?
Yeah.
You get into business because you want to help people. If you look at anybody who we consider super successful, right? Sarah Blakely or Elon Musk or whoever, right? CEOs of big companies. First of all, they start out like every single one of us in a garage, across a kitchen table, or at a diner, talking someone's ear off about their vision.
Yeah.
And they just chose to move forward. And I think that that's what people don't get. It didn't take Steve Jobs overnight to create Apple. And so give yourself a break, like take that pressure off yourself and build something that matters to you. That's why those businesses were so successful, because they weren't looking for that push button thing. If you want a push button thing, marry a rich person. Like that's all you can do.
That's the easier way out.
Right? That's what my mother wanted me to do. Yeah. You know, she was like, why are you so committed to not marrying rich guys? And I'm like, have you ever heard that quote by Cher? Cher was like, her mom told her, you know, I thought you were going to marry a CEO. And she said, Mom,
why don't marry a rich man? And she's like, I am the man, right?
I am
that
man.
person. Yeah, I'm that person you want me to marry. I love that. My mom does the same thing too. Asian
Yes.
I love what you said there about like you don't have a marketing problem, you have a messaging problem. It's like not your sales funnel, because people think about the sales funnel, they forget the whole point of a sales funnel is messaging. It's a narrative.
Absolutely.
It's a story there. But anyways, we're like teasing so much of it. Let's get right into the unique messaging model. There are 6 things here, right? So it's like a circle, and
yes.
The graph if you can see this graphic right here. And the first one here is values. So tell me a little bit more about this one.
Yeah. So I told you my personal story, right, of why I left that cushy job and became an entrepreneur. And that was a big moment for me, because now I was creating my future. And if I say that I want that, then I have to behave like that. So when we think about values, you're probably asking, like, how do I know my real values?
Yeah.
Well, let me give you a little prompt that will help you know it. We do an entire assessment for our clients, but this is the easiest way. Two things, write these questions down.
Yeah.
So the first is, where do you spend the most time? So if you look at just last week and you were to write down, where did you spend your last time? That's a real big indicator of where your values are. Okay. So wherever you spend the most time is where your values are. Number two, values are behavior. They're not thoughts. That's really important. Okay.
Ooh. That's like, you know, when people have like, these are my ideal values, but they're not really living them, right? Like,
right. And you are living them, but you're not admitting that those things are your real values. Because, you know, I think about when I was in the corporate world, I thought that ambition was my highest value, right? But I realize now it's autonomy. Well, in my head, I was like, I don't want these people to control me. These people are stupid. I'm the smartest person here. Like, these are the thoughts that were running through my head, right? And
every entrepreneur's mind goes through that way.
Absolutely. It's like, why are things so inefficient? If they just did it the way that I think we should do it, it would work, right? And notice that was all in my head, but I wasn't courageous enough to say it out of my mouth in a way that could get me fired. I mean, I definitely was always spunky and I always spoke what I thought, but I had to kind of like tamp it down so that they could accept it, right? And when I started to say, no, the only way I can truly move my thoughts into my behavior is to make this leap into entrepreneurship, I had to listen to myself. So that's an example. So if you're thinking a lot of things, they're not your values yet. They're the values you want. Okay. And so if that's the case, then what behavior, what actions do you have to take to prove that those are really your values? So I think that probably will help you understand values a little bit more. And yes, they matter because you're the founder of your company. The values of a company come from the founder. If you look at, again, I'll use Apple because everybody knows that product, that brand, right? They still are living Steve Jobs' dream, even though he's no longer on this earth, right?
Yeah.
And so your values as founder permeate, and they are the main building block of the company that you're creating. Even if your company is a solo company and you just want to sell courses for a living, okay? It's no different.
Yes, like no matter if it's big or small, the values is like the foundation of it. And what I really came out of that was just like, you have to live in alignment with that. And that's so true. Cause like, so much as like, there's like a lack of integrity sometimes if you see like a founder who's doing something completely different and you're like, this is my company. You're like, I don't really trust that company anymore. You're like out of alignment. You're not living your values.
Exactly. And it's not just you then, because whatever your values are for your company, the people inside your company, even if in the beginning they are fractional or they are part-time or they're contractors, you want to be able to share what the values of the company are. For example, in our company, our top 5 core values are autonomy. That one's pretty obvious. Generosity, justice, leadership, and legacy. And every single one of those values has a description of what that means to us. And we share it and we onboard anybody, even if they're a contractor. We say, hey, just to let you know, these are our values. And we make decisions based on these values. We don't make decisions outside of this value set. And people are blown away when they start to implement the same because it actually eliminates decision fatigue.
Yes.
From what you need to do next in your company. And I really mean it when I say your company. Again, if you're just starting out and you're listening to us, you have to think of yourself as building a company. It is a business. And values help, I'm going to use the word soften it in a good way, right? Like in a way that it's about you and the passion that you had to make this happen. And so, yeah, it's really important. It's the foundation of the unique message model.
It's almost like foundational, and it's also kind of a secret sauce. Cause like, I think when I think branding, I think values, I think the messaging, the copywriting is like how they take that value and kind of like express it in a way, like through the visuals. Like for Apple, it's like simplicity, right? Or good design. And it's like anything that's complicated, be like cut immediately. Yep. And so everything is almost brand aligned. I think this is what creates coherency, not just in the branding, in the message, but not what they show to the audience, but also what's behind the audience. It's because, like, there's a saying here, the fish rots from the head down. So if the internal company doesn't have or live that value or that, that brand standard, it kind of just floats out to the front of the audience somehow,
Absolutely. Don't skip this part, because it is actually the part that is exactly the heart of every brand you admire is a brand that's living their values, period. And if you want to be a brand that people admire, meaning they buy it and they tell other people about it, even if it's, again, you're teaching people or coaching people how to live their best life, you need to start here. That's absolutely important. Critical.
So, okay, let's go to the next part of this circle here. So now you know your values. That's your stronghold, your root, the place where you start from. Tell me a little bit more about this archetype influential mix, the aim.
Yeah. So, I bet some of you listening are personality quiz junkies. Like, your MBI, your MBTI, which is your Myers-Briggs, or your Enneagram, or your human design, or your wealth dynamics, right? Yeah. Your wealth dynamics, your astrology, right? Yeah, like what's, all of it, right? So humans love personality stuff. So that actually comes from the work of Carl Jung. That's spelled Jung. And Carl Jung was a socio-psychologist who started to coin why humans are so attracted to characters in stories. Okay. And so archetypes are merely characters, if you will, in the story that you're telling about your business. And I learned about this early in my career when I was a copywriter back in the day, in the Ice Ages. And we had the Coca-Cola account. And okay, I'm really going to age myself here, but this was 1996. Oh my God. And
you look, I mean, maybe it's just like the whole thing about Asians don't raisin, but like you look really young.
Thank you. I'm going to take it. I'm going to hold on as long as I can, Melissa. But I got to tell you, like, I was like this doe-eyed 22-year-old wanting to absorb and learn so much. And it's where I learned about archetypes. Every single advertising agency, big ones, Ogilvy, McCann, you name it, they all use archetypes as part of their prescription of how a brand messages itself. So what archetypes are the character and the brand voice that you're expressing throughout the way that you talk about what you're selling. And so there are 12 archetypes in the archetype influence mix, which is your top 3 archetypes that influence how you want your brand to be heard in the marketplace. So your brand voice. And they are the advocate, the alchemist, the creator, the explorer, the healer, the hero, the lover, the maverick, the muse, the ruler, the provocateur, and the sage. I know that was a mouthful. You don't have to memorize it, or like, you don't even have to stop this video to like write them all down. That's not as important as understanding that you need to know what your top 3 are. And the good news is, because I'm a teacher here in Thinkific, I'm going to give you the personality quiz that allows you to find out your own. So that's exciting. So don't be stressed. You'll be able to figure out what you are too. But the point that I'm making here about archetypes is, if an advertising company's job is to persuade and influence consumers to buy the product that they've been hired to advertise. And so if they're using archetypes, why aren't you? That's the biggest thing that I found, Melissa, when I jumped from corporate to entrepreneurship. I was like, nobody's using this as a true strategy in their messaging. In the entrepreneur, they're using it as like fluffy, like, oh, it's so cute, I'm this thing, and I'm like, sister, you could be using it to actually be more impactful in the way that you're talking about your business and your brand. And so archetypes allow you to have the confidence to speak about what you're selling in a way that's authentic to you and in alignment with your values. So for example, again, I promise you guys will have the opportunity to find out yours a little bit later, but my company, our aim is the ruler as our dominant, the explorer as our intrinsic, which means our number 2, and then the lover as our intuitive archetype, which is our 3rd. And what that means is, you look at our values, our 5 values, and then you look at our aim, archetype influence mix, and we ask ourselves every time we put out a message in email, in social media, in our programs, are we being on brand in our voice as ruler, explorer, lover, archetypes. And so just to give you a hint, the ruler is the expert. They are the CEOs. They are the people who feel, like light up a room with confidence. The explorer is the person who is a guide and helps you move into places you've never explored before, but they give you a map to get there. And then the lover is the brand that helps people feel intimacy, even if there are a lot of clients. So even when you're working with a bunch of people, that their messaging feels intimate to you. And so we work really hard on that filter. Now, I want to say one more thing about archetypes, is that there is no such thing as one archetype being better than the other. Like you heard me say ruler is the CEO and the thing.
Yeah.
Don't take that literally. It's not like, oh, only if you're a ruler, you can be a CEO of your business. No, that's not what I mean. It's the energy it's the vibe of the CEO. But if you're a muse archetype, in fact, I would argue that the muse and the alchemist archetypes, from a visibility standpoint, are two of the most powerful archetypes in entrepreneurship and innovation. Like alchemist is Apple. So they make things magical, but it looks very simple, right? Versus the muse. The top brand in the world that has the highest value in equity is Coca-Cola, because you can get sugar to Timbuktu. You can't get Wi-Fi there, although Mark Zuckerberg is trying. So they have a perfect business model because they sell something that is addictive, literally sugar. And the muse archetype focuses on nostalgia and childlike innocence. And so when you think about Coca-Cola's advertising, they speak to the nostalgic part of us. And so do you see how if you get muse as your top archetype and you're like, oh, I'm so soft, I'm childlike, I'm like, that is one of the most powerful archetypes in the world. And every single one of them are powerful. It's just that you're not using it with potency. You're using weak language to describe what you do. Coca-Cola goes all the way in. In fact, their number one competitor is who? You know, Melissa, right? Who's the competitor to Coke?
Pepsi.
Right, exactly. Pepsi is a ruler archetype. That's their dominant archetype. So it proves the point I'm saying that like ruler's not better than muse, because Pepsi has never overtaken Coca-Cola. They wish they could. But do you notice with Pepsi, what do they use? They use celebrities. They use thought leaders. Those are who's in their advertising, because they're ruler brand. You see what I'm saying? So if you understand this, and the cool thing is, again, you guys are going to get this, the reports on your own, because Thinkific, we're partners with Thinkific, we love them. You will see how you can use them to better message your brand. It's really powerful work. So I'm excited.
Now, the cool part about that was, again, you showed like, the Coke and Pepsi sell the same thing, but their messaging and their feeling and the energy behind it so different. One is like, one is more potent, like hella. The nostalgia of like light bulb memories and, just smelling is so much more of a motivator for people. And people make emotional buys, right? They don't buy logically. People buy with their emotions. So if you can really tap into the emotion, that's one way to do it. The question I had, like, for a lot of the archetypes, because it's beautiful, because like our personality is so vast and we are trying to give it a language. I think that's what all these personality tests help us do, help us understand ourselves better. And these archetypes help kind of segment them in, so we can kind of like look at it and be like, okay, now how do we use this in our messaging? How much of it is our personality into these archetypes, and how much of it do we need to think about the audience and how they'd resonate? Should we be even thinking about the audience about this?
No. Yes, no, from the archetype standpoint. That's why the unique message model is a model, because the archetype is still about you. The values are about you, the founder. The archetype is about you, by the way. Now I get questions like, oh, what if I have a co-founder? It is the person who is the main messenger that the mission is linked on. That is the archetype influence mix for a company. And so it is not about the audience. It's about finding people who resonate with the way you sound, right? You're not looking for the people that you want to transform and change into your sound. You want to find the people who are attracted to your sound, and they will be, because you're going to understand their unique problem, which is what we talk about next. and the unique message model.
Okay, so amazing. So you want to start with branding, and you want to know who your branding is and who your messaging is so that you can attract the right people. It's not the opposite of like, who do I want to go after because that's the biggest niche in the market, and how do I make the messaging fit them but it doesn't feel good about me, right? That's not what
Exactly. I mean,
don't do that.
That's back to, remember I said one of the biggest problems I see is people paint themselves in a corner. Remember, one of my taglines in my company is, we help you get seen, heard, and paid to be you. Then you're not building something you hate, because we all want to love ourselves more. So build it out of you, and you'll have so much confidence. This is the contrarian way to what everybody else is teaching. But the reason they're teaching that is because it's easier to hear. But when I tell you it's about you, we get uncomfortable with ourselves. Like, oh, do we have enough confidence to do it? Do we have imposter syndrome? All that stuff. I'm hoping this unique message model will actually, again, help you slay those demons or those dragons that are holding you back. Like, it's okay to get paid to be you first, because if you're confident, people are attracted to that. And again, confidence isn't about extroversion. It's not about loudness. It's not about boldness even. It's just about you being the most you can be. And so it's really important to understand that. And I hope that gives you all some confidence that you can do it.
Just be you. And this model is actually really good. I love this model because it like really teases apart all the components that a lot of people struggle with. Like we're gonna jump into one big one here right now. Your niche. Everyone knows that you got to niche down for your product, for your offering and services. But you have a very different idea of what a niche is than what we normally know it as.
Yeah, a lot of people identify niche or niche, however you pronounce it, as the person or the demographic or the avatar or the psychographic of the people you're trying to reach. And I wouldn't say that that's not true, but I would say it's not the top thing that a niche is, okay? A niche is simply the problem that you're actually solving with what you're selling. So whatever you're selling, AKA the solution to their problem, is what you need to answer in this prompt. So if you're going, what is my rich niche? What is the thing that I'm really solving? You're solving a problem. So what I tell clients to do is to write down, let's say you're selling parenting advice, okay? And I'll ask the question, okay, when it comes to parenting, write down all the problems that you are solving for them in the solution that you're providing. And that will tell you who you need to find, because once you know that, you can go find them. You can go find them in forums. You can go find them on Reddit. You can go find them on Facebook. And then you can really talk to them using your values and your archetypes. So that's what speaks to the audience.
And this is like, it's a circle because it's not linear, right? Because we're going to get to a point where we get into like the solution of it. And so it's like, if you know your unique solution, then you can kind of work backwards and be like, what does this solution solve? And then like from what problems you're really deeply solving, then you can go back to like, who has these problems most, right?
Yes.
So that's why it's kind of like not linear. It's like you can like do one part of this circle hexagon actually, and then it will actually help inform the other part of the hexagon, and kind of like works iteratively, right?
Absolutely. It's not linear. It's so important to understand that. And as you grow and you find out what your audience really wants after you've sold a little bit, it'll change. Like components inside of the hexagon will change a bit. They'll shift. And that's great, because this will serve you throughout the lifetime of your business for sure.
All right. That's super cool. So if I'm just gonna like moment here. The example for parenting, I like missed it. Could we jump back into that and be like, can I just like ask if let's say there was an example. Let's say there was an example for like somebody who was a parenting expert. What would be an example of like some niche down areas of that?
So as I said, first start with what are all problems that all parents have? Okay. So you start with what all parents have. Well, and it depends, right? First of all, it depends on the age of the children, right? Because there's different challenges from birth till 18. It's very different stages of their life. So what what is the age that this solution that at least you're thinking of, even if you haven't built it yet, would you want to be dealing with newborns, right? Do you want to be dealing with toddlers? Do you want to be dealing with elementary school kids? Do you want to be dealing with problems that parents have with their teenagers? There's all of these categories. Now you're noticing the demographics in there because they are relevant to the problem, right? But they're not the niche. They are part of the niche. Okay, great. So now you ask, let's pretend I said, oh no, I definitely want to help parents speak to their teenage children in a way
that's a hard one.
right, it's a hard one, right?
So I remember myself as a teenager.
Oh yes, I mean, I'm surprised I'm still alive, to be honest with you. Based on the fact that my mother probably could have killed me herself, and also the things that I got into. But anyway, it's a big problem, right? That needs to be solved. So as you're listing things, of course you could talk about, let's say, okay, so now we're going down to that. Okay, so now communicating with your teenager in a way that helps them still want to live a good life, because every parent wants their child, at least every good parent, in my opinion, wants their child to be even more successful than they are, like ultimately, right? So imagine that was like that what you were solving. It's like how to talk to your teen so that in difficult conversations, how to approach conflict with your teen without taking their motivation to be successful away, right? That's the problem you're actually solving, because it's not just that they're fighting, but it's also about what the parent's worried about, right? The parent is worried about, and they might not even know they're worried, but it's subconsciously running. Like, oh, I'm going to screw my kid up. Oh, I'm going to do something and they're not going to become the best person they could be, but I have to discipline them, right? So how do I discipline them in a way that supports them? And when you're doing this exercise, again, don't treat this as like a one and done exercise. Take this opportunity to define your niche as a creative activity. Like go, oh, okay, what are all the scenarios that this particular parenting problem, what are they going to encounter? Because that becomes, we're not even there yet, but that becomes your actual offer, because you're noticing what are the components. And if you keep it simple, like you could even wind it down to this particular, I'm going to give you a set of scripts to handle these 5 scenarios, these most 5 common scenarios that make parents and teenagers not get along. That's a course by itself, right?
Yeah.
And, and it's like, oh gosh, and it's such a simple solution, but it's a real problem. That's true for most parents, right? I'm a parent, so I can't think of another parent that I know that wouldn't be like, gosh, I really want to have access to that if they have teenage kids. You could even sell it to people who like want to give a gift at Christmas to people who have teenagers. There's all kinds of things that you could be thinking of if you really understand the root problem that you're trying to solve. And that will reveal who your audience really is.
That's really cool. It's actually, we're like kind of teasing into the next bit here. I'm going to really jump into, because it just lines up so much. And when you have the problem, you come up with the use case, the unique solution expertise here, right? And that's kind of so like linked together. So how does those two things relate when you're coming up with your brand messaging?
Right. So think of your use case as the framework by which you're teaching your customers to use the solution you're providing. Okay. And it's really the strategy that you're selling. It's your intellectual property. It's the path or the model by which you're selling it. For example, in this case, I'm sharing the unique messaging model. That is a use case for my company. So the key to building a great use case is thinking about the steps that it's going to take to get to the solution. And by the way, it doesn't end there, because a lot of times, and I especially see this with content creators, experts, teachers, they put too many steps. They're like trying to put 27 steps. And there probably is 27
Curse
steps.
Curse of knowledge.
Right. Curse of knowledge. Oh my gosh. Yes. The best practice is about to have 3 to 5 chunks of information that lead to the solution. And that's what your unique solution expertise is. So in my case, I'm telling you how to make a better message so that your marketing works, right? These are the 6 components that you need, right? So what are the 3 to 5 to 7 max components that you need, or the person you're trying to sell to needs to achieve the solution that they've bought? Because remember, people are buying what they need. They're not buying it because you have it. Okay. They're buying it because you're messaging that it will either solve a problem, cure a problem, or get them a desire that they want so deeply, but they can't get on their own. Right. So if that's the case, then you need to show them a path. And in fact, when I sell our programs, the thing that I lead with is the unique message model as our model. Like that's what I'm selling. I'm selling them
because you use it yourself, right?
Right.
Yes.
And we've gotten $80 million for our clients just even during the pandemic for the last 2 years, just using this model. So for me, it's like, for you, I think that you need to take some time to think about what are the components, not just what is the syllabus or what is the 27 things that are in this program. It's like there is a path there and they need to feel like they can actually do it using your use case because they understand and see the parts. If that makes sense.
It's really like about simplifying it down. And something that reminds me here is the levels of mastery about something. And when you're truly an expert about something, there's like levels of understanding. And when you're at the top level of mastery, that is when you're able to simplify everything into a framework and to synthesize that information to something new that can be broken down. I can't remember, was it Albert Einstein who said something like, if you can't say something simply, you don't know it well enough. There's like some quote like that, right?
Love that. Yeah.
And like I love what you said here, because it was about like you shouldn't be creating, like if you're not an expert in something, don't do that as your first thing, because a lot of people are like, oh, I should do this, but it's like you're not an expert in that. Like you have a really cool story here about your first business selling underwear, and you made like $100 million selling underwear.
10 million, but yeah,
10 million.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And I probably could have made 100 million if I would have stuck with it. But there was a little thing called a recession when I started my first company, and it was my first business, guys. And I failed. I like rocket shipped up because I had all this brand and launching knowledge. But what I didn't understand was how to run my business because I was new. So you're going to screw up and mess it up, right? And based on your expertise, right? But now that I've, again, a seasoned chicken, I can show you that, oh, there's these roadblocks down the way. But first, I'm not going to share those roadblocks down the way because you're not even there yet. So what I'm going to ask you is your message taking off? Do people actually want to buy this thing, right? Because I actually started a women's underwear company after I left that cushy job we talked about earlier. And I wasn't an underwear expert, you guys. I wasn't, I wore underwear, but I wasn't like an expert in clothing, although I love to shop. So I picked something where I felt like someone was not solving that problem where I lived. And that's, remember the niche? There was a problem, and that was, there was no place to buy underwear where I lived. I lived in Hawaii. And at the time, if you can believe it, there was no Nordstrom, no Macy's. There was only Walmart. And I ain't buying my underwear at Walmart. No offense to anybody who does. But for me, I would get on a plane and go to Victoria's Secret. And I noticed that a lot of women did too. And so I picked that as my niche. So yay, I checked off a box, right? In my own unique message model. But what I didn't understand was how cost intensive a retail business is, right? That's why a lot of you want to like build courses and be coaches, because you understand that it's not a high capital risk for you, right? Because I had leases and I bought property and I had employees and I had, oh my God, I had inventory. I had inventory. I mortgaged my house to do this. Wow. And I would not recommend it today. You know what I mean? But I did it because at the time I was focusing on what I knew. But guys, I hope what you get the lesson is it's good that I did that, because there's no way I would have been successful after it if I had not leaned into my expertise, which was building a brand, getting people to love it, right? And selling the products inside the solution. But what I was missing, as I said, was like that other part. So when I failed royally in 2008, and I had the question about, should I go back to the corporate world because Verizon wanted me back, okay, because I was really good at my job, or should I do another thing? Remember what my top value is? I had to go back to my values and say, does this help me get autonomy? And guess what I learned? Having a retail business did not give me autonomy. I built a thing that did not help me become what I wanted. But I was like, ooh, but that's a great lesson. Okay.
Yeah.
So if autonomy is real, I got to behave like I'm thinking. So I decided, well, if I'm really good at this branding, marketing, launching, writing thing, I should go back to that. And I did. And I made Verizon my first client in my consulting business. Right?
Yeah.
They wanted me to be their employee. And I was like, tell you what, you can hire me as a consultant. And they did. And to this point, they've paid my company millions of dollars. They're still a client of ours since 2009. And yeah, it's how you turn the ship around, friends. You have to lean into your expertise because that is so valuable. So valuable. And if you try to sell something that you don't know enough about, you'll never be able to sell it. That's the bottom line.
It's like when people have imposter syndrome. I think what was it? If you have imposter syndrome, you might actually have it. I think, is that what you said?
Right. Yeah, exactly. You might actually be an imposter. And instead of thinking, and I also think imposter syndrome is a total cop-out. Like and I'm not teasing you if you're feeling it, guys. I think it's a way that's been romanced to give you an excuse not to do hard things, right? The things that, or you've created some type of resentment towards your past life. Like say you worked in the corporate world and you were mad. Like I could have been mad that I got passed up for a promotion and I really was mad. Okay, I was mad. But if I focus on that and didn't take the lessons from my corporate life into this business that I run now, I wouldn't be so successful because it taught me discipline. Working in the corporate world taught me discipline. It taught me structure. It taught me the things that I needed because as an entrepreneur, you're probably your crappiest boss you ever were. You know what I mean? You think your boss at the corporate world was crappy? Think about yourself, right? Like, are you disciplining yourself to get what you want done? Probably not. I didn't in the beginning. And so it's so important that you sell stuff that you know first. That's what the unique solution expertise is. Then you build from there. And if you build from there, the next thing will appear that you're supposed to do. I promise you.
I think it's like really good because like your first step was like you can build a brand. You can build out a brand of anything. It was just the real tell thing that was like the trickier part, right? So you kind of showed yourself like, you know what? I can brand this and I can make money because I know how to get a piece of underwear and turn it into a brand that somebody wants to buy from. And that kind of gives you that confidence, be like, yeah, I am freaking damn good at this thing. And so you do the next thing and then the next thing because it gives you that confidence. Like if I wasn't an expert, like I should be, let's say this, I suck at dancing. And I was just like, I know everybody wants to dance, but I wouldn't go out and make a dancing thing just because I know it could make me a lot of money and it's like a huge thing here, or, interior design is a big thing these days. Because I'm not an expert. And I think that's a huge problem that I see some, especially coaches who are like, I want to work with, sorry, that's not how coaches sound, but like they want to work with like really, really big, top tier like CEOs.
Yeah.
And their expertise is not working with CEOs. They're top tier, like they've mainly worked with, let's say, like mothers. And they're like, but that's where the money is. That's where the CEOs is. And they try and go for that. And it's just like, that's not the first thing you should go after. You should go with what you know first. Build that mastery, build that brand, that messaging, the results that you can actually get. And then like slowly build that up and then decide to go on to something else because you're like jumping off from your previous successes, right? Like what you did with the panty business.
Correct. Exactly. And what do panties have to do with consulting? Not much, but like, it's the point is it's mastery is transferable to other industries. You have to trust that because ultimately whatever you like, say you're good at coaching moms, that means that you probably you got to go find some moms that are CEOs. Go coach them, right?
Yeah.
And and then you'll start to hear what they're complaining about, frankly, around their career versus parenting their crazy ass teen, right? Like you'll start to hear these connection points and that will help you then establish, now I have those CEO moms will find other CEO moms. And then ultimately the CEO dads are going to get, maybe if you want to help both parents or gender agnostic, right? Like whatever you want. That's how it works, y'all. Like you have to create and build your momentum.
It's like I almost see it like as a concentric circle. It's like this is your expertise. Nail that, and then slowly get into the blurrier lines of who else fits into that, and then like who else fits into that, and like that kind of builds your because like your repertoire, which kind of like bleeds into what we're talking about next, like all of this, the things that you have right now, like all the stuff, your corporate experience, your entrepreneur experience is like, you have a story. Like that is what builds this authority and credibility. So you have this thing called the TESS, the experience story sequence. And that kind of like blends everything together, because it's like, cool, you can have all of these things, but how do you communicate that builds trust with other people?
Yeah. Well, first of all, great brands are great storytellers. Okay. And stories move the world. If you think about the world today, it's based on literature. And the three main pieces of literature are the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah. Okay. And then there are others like the Eastern Asian books, etc. Okay. My point is that, yes, I Ching, that's a great book, by the way. And so that's where we take a lot of our current modern thinking from. Isn't that interesting? So cool is like, if you want to change that old way of thinking, you have to write a new book, which is your brand. Okay, your brand is a symbol. It's a real thing that actually changes whatever you don't believe in anymore. Okay, so because those 4 books we just mentioned, there are a ton more, but those 4 books we just mentioned literally are the pillar of modern existence. Think about it. Crazy, right? They're books of stories. That's what they are. Okay, so now let's jump to like you as an entrepreneur. You have to get good at telling your story. And the cool thing is you only need to get good at 2 things. Telling what I call your authority stories and your approachability stories. So those are the 2 different types of stories. So let's start with authority. So authority stories are things that, or stories that demonstrate that you're an expert at solving problems. Now, that might freak some of you out because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just getting started here. I have no authority, etc. You actually do. And here's a little cheat code for you. If you don't have authority yet in teaching CEO moms how to be great CEOs, okay, then what you're going to do is you're going to go look for research by Harvard or by Forbes or anything that can say that you're sharing that is authoritative around the concepts you're teaching in your use case. Because your use case, remember, is the framework by which you're teaching them. So the authority story proves that the use case is reputable. So if you don't have it yet, you can borrow authority from other sources. And that's completely in integrity. So for example, again, that CEO mom example that we've been talking about, coaching CEO moms, I would go and see what is the percentage of moms that are CEOs that are leaving the workforce. At the time of this recording, we know that the Great Resignation is happening. Beyonce just launched her song, which is like, people are saying is encouraging people to quit their jobs, which I know Beyonce is not telling people to quit their jobs, but she created a song, a movement. And the idea is like, you could even use that. Beyonce wrote this song. She's a very successful CEO of her business. Why did she write that song? Because she was disenchanted with the pressures put on her as a mother, even though she can have all the resources in the world. She still wants to be a mom. That's why she has Snack Pack for her kids at the award shows. You see that story right there? That is an authority story.
You're like borrowing the authority in the story from someone else, because it doesn't necessarily have to be your story. It's just a story that somebody else that people resonate with, right?
And then when you get those clients, when you get your first 10 clients and you get them to create a breakthrough, you get, their course or your coaching helps them. Now you have another authority story. Authority stories build upon each other, right? Because like, okay, so now I've got this CEO mom who actually left her job, like Jen Kem, and started her own business, right? That's now another authority story. In fact, your most powerful authority story ultimately are your case studies of your clients, period. Okay. So, and authority also includes things like your education, your certifications, et cetera, but they are not the only authority stories. So those are authority stories. Approachability stories are what I call like, it makes you like them, whoever your audience is, or it makes them believe that you are somebody they'd want to hang out with. Like you're a real human being, that you've gone through some stuff, right? And we were talking about this earlier, right, Melissa? It's like a lot of people get worried. Like they're like, I don't have a come up story. I don't have a story about me overcoming something huge or whatever. And approachability stories aren't just about the bad times or the times that you had a challenge. They're also about like the good times. Like if you're a coach, let's use the same example, a coach of CEOs, or you want to be that, but you're going to start with parenting first because you have expertise there, right? Your approachability is like, oh, like for me, if I was that coach, I'd be like, I did work in corporate and I was on my way on the CEO path for 10 years. That's not an authority story. That's an approachability story. It says that I was in your shoes at some point.
Right. Like something that people can relate to you about, right?
Exactly.
Makes you relatable.
Exactly. And I think the key to authority and approachability stories is the only ones that matter telling are the ones that help you sell your offer. That's really important.
Yeah.
Girl, let me just talk about something that really irks me. There are so many people who teach storytelling out there on these wild internet streets. And they're like, oh, just tell your story. Like everybody wants to hear your story. That's not true. I just need to tell y'all that. Not all of your stories don't make you sell your stuff. It's the stories that you choose that are real stories, okay, that support your entire unique message model that matter. And this transforms your marketing like nobody's business. Because part of the reason you think, okay, I should just storytell, and then people are going to buy my stuff. No, if you're confusing them, like what does this story have to do with the offer I'm selling? If there's no connection, you're asking the audience to make the connection. My friends, like we have the attention span of a gnat now. You know what I mean? With all of the stuff that we're exposed to. So you have to connect the dots in a better way. And so that's really, really important.
It's something you said interesting because like you don't actually have to tell every story. It's just the ones that support and give weight to what you're actually providing, like whatever services that you're offering here. And so authenticity and transparency are actually not the same thing. Like you can still be authentic without being transparent.
Exactly. Right? I mean, transparency means what it means. It's like you tell them everything. That's not in service to your audience. That's actually quite selfish in my opinion. They don't need to hear all that. That's you being, and I'm going to say this with love, that's you being lazy because you think that entertaining comedian types on the internet are doing that. Therefore, you should. By the way, they've created an audience already. If you're just starting out, you want to be very strategic with your authority and your approachability story. So you not telling everything is not inauthentic. I know that sounded like a lot of double negatives, but you don't tell anybody. If you don't tell something, that doesn't mean that you are keeping things from your audience. It means that you've chosen that strategically, and it's a real story. It's not a story you made up, and you've linked it to what you're selling. That's the difference. And it will give you freedom like nobody's business. Now you're free to tell the stories that matter, and you're free to keep close to your chest and your vest the things that you don't right at this point don't want to share, and it's fine.
Yeah.
You know, so let that be freedom for you, friends.
I love that. Because I thought of people were just like, well, I don't have a story. You gave them a solution to that. And it's like, well, I don't want to tell every dirty little secret or story that I'm not comfortable with. And you don't have to do that too. And it doesn't have to feel inauthentic. It has to, the messaging has to be clear. Yes. And you can't dilute that with like 10 million stories, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we've got like all of that. And it kind of just rounds up to the very last thing here is like, what are you actually delivering to people? Right. So I think, this is where copywriting really comes into play here. It's really sharing what you're offering up.
Yeah. And your offer is basically, yes, the solution or the thing that you're selling, but ultimately it's the promise you're making. This is the promise you're making when they buy your course or they work with you as a coach or they're buying your crystals online, whatever you sell. But it's the promise. And so basically your offer is the use case itself. So the steps, right, that you're selling and the way that they will consume it. So meaning like, let's say it's a course, you're going to say, okay, there's a 6-step process to creating a unique message model, right? That's my thing.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Well, in 8 modules, because the first module is I'm prepping you and giving you the context of what this all means and how you can apply it to various industries. And I'm going to teach you each component and give you worksheets, prompts, and an actual system to be able to collect all this so you can build a great story. But the key is that the promise that I'm mentioning is there. So meaning after you complete the unique message model program, you will be able to X, Y, and Z. That's really important. That's what an irresistible offer offers. It doesn't just say, oh, you get like group coaching calls, or you get like, who cares? Great. That's a feature.
That's like the
That's
means.
right.
Yes,
It's a delivery
means,
method.
it's not the end.
Right. It's a delivery method. But if
Yeah.
you lead with the promise, that's what an irresistible offer does. It leads with the promise that it's going to solve the problem that they have. And you're showing the evidence of that using the rest of the components of a unique message model.
And like when I've seen this done really well in a lot of copywriting, and like what they sell is usually a future vision of yourself and the emotion attached to that future vision, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a CEO mom, if you're coaching one of those people, it's like you have like time back, you have money, you have happy kids, like teenagers who trust you, like, you know, like the end goal. And you kind of like tell them that, well, that's what I'm going to get you if you do this, right?
Yeah.
You sell the end first.
Yeah. And the key is, remember back to the niche or the niche?
Yeah.
Solve the tiny things first. Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you try to throw everything in the kitchen sink in your program, also people won't buy it because they get overwhelmed. We have an attention span problem, especially now. Like if you tell them it's going to take you a year to finish this program, they're going to be like, I don't want to buy it. Right. And you have to build the story that if it's a year, let's say coaching program or a mastermind, that's a different offer. And therefore what you're selling in that case is ongoing support, right? Versus like it's a course and you tell them it's going to take them 6 months. Nobody wants that. Generally speaking, like we're already so pressed for time.
Yeah.
So you got to find that way to message it that they'll want to consume it.
So it's like almost like, okay, you want to promise, but you don't want to promise too much. It's almost like you want to make one big promise and that's one offer. And then if there's other promises that solve like other bigger parts of the solution, you want to create multiple solutions. You want to create multiple offers and different promises. And that kind of like, that's kind of good in the sense that like you said this right here. One of the big things that you wanted people to do is like not build crap and feel shitty about it. It is that you get autonomy by doing one-offs. You get autonomy by doing like smaller offers.
Yes, absolutely. Tiny offers. By the way, tiny offers doesn't mean tiny money, right?
Yeah.
You're actually doing people a favor when it's a quick win, right?
Right.
When it's a quick win, not only do now you have authority stories to tell, right? They will tell other people, you got to take this little course. It is absolutely amazing. And then they'll trust you and they'll want to take the other solutions you have. So it's a real, you don't have to sell it for $7 or $97. If you can help me have a better relationship with my kids, for example, my teenage kid who were fighting all the time, then you're priceless to me. So if you can give me those like 5 scenarios,
energy, sweat, and tears, yeah.
right. Fear, right? You're going to allay fear that I have as a parent, all the things. You can help my self-esteem. You got to speak to those things in your irresistible offer.
It's like 1 inch wide and 6 feet deep. And then several of those.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. Oh man. Okay. So that was like, there was a whole bunch of value there for you guys. Just to recap here though. So the unique message model, there's 6 things. We start off and like, feel free to correct me here if I miss anything here. Values, what you stand for and deeply believe in. This is where you root it from. From there, you'll understand this is building up who you are and how it represents in your brand, your archetype, and you want to mix here your top 3, your rich niche, which is really about focusing on the actual problems that you're really solving with your solution. And that's coming up with your solution. And the solution is something that you have to be an actual expert in and experience so much that you can simplify it down into a framework. And once you have that, now what makes you credible to share this? Like how will people believe you and what you're telling them as this is a reputable answer to their problems is through stories, through the experience story sequence. There's 2, authority and approachability. And then you don't need to have your own sad, sobby, messy story to do that. You can borrow authority from other people. And with approachability, it's really about just making yourself relatable. And lastly, once you get all of that done, you can create your irresistible offer. And the big takeaway here is you want to make big promises one big promise, not too many promises, and go like 1 inch wide and 6 feet deep. And you want to do many of those. That gives you freedom to do many more launches and products that you'd want to do that actually like relate and align with you. But at the same time, it keeps it concise, and that's what everybody wants these days, right? Like
and you don't build things that you hate, because
yeah,
you'll
you don't
start
build
to
things
see,
that you hate.
yeah, you'll start to see the things, ooh, I don't want to sell this thing anymore. And you got it done with velocity. That's so important, because now I'm like, oh, good. I'm so glad and relieved that I don't have to sell this thing anymore, right? The faster you get there, the faster your life will like look so different for you. And money
Actually,
will
that's
not
so
be a
true.
problem.
That's so true. Like
Mhm.
I build programs, like multiple programs when I'm managing, and I'm just like, I want to do shorter ones. I don't want to do these like 6-month long, like huge course campaigns. I'm like, when is that one done? I want to do the next one already.
Yeah.
Maybe that fits with my personality. But that's actually comes up to our hot seat questions time. And the hot seat question is, what kind of brand archetype do you think I am actually?
Well, okay. So I suspect that you have either Maverick and Alchemist in you. That's what I
Interesting.
suspect. Um, but I also see Explorer in you, because
Mm-hmm.
you're interested in a lot of different things. Was I right on any of those?
You're right on all of them.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's me. Either that just means your quiz is really well done, or you're magical and you have some magical glasses where you can see these things.
I have been doing this so long that it's kind of funny. If somebody opens their mouth, I can see exactly what their archetype mix is. And so it's just a matter of back to like you said, mastery, right? Like if you've been doing it for 20 years, like I have, again, aging myself so badly, you'll start to spot things super quick, and you can help people faster too. So that's awesome.
I do that. I do that to every Myers-Briggs. Whenever I go on a date, I just like Myers-Briggs. I'm like ENFJ,
Yeah.
INSFP.
Yeah. What
Okay.
are you, by the way? What's your MBTI?
I am an ENFP / ENFJ.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
my human design is projector.
Oh, I am too.
Yo!
Yes.
Amplifiers of
Yes.
the world.
Yes.
Okay. Another secret. Question 2. What are the top secrets of copywriting? Because you've done this for so long and everyone has so many problems with this.
Well, okay. So I'll give you 3 things that are really important. Write these down. Number 1, rewatch this episode and don't put it on. If you want to, put it on 2x or 10x or whatever. But this framework has literally made our clients, who are mainly experts like you, over $80 million even through the pandemic. So why wouldn't you rewatch the thing that you know has gotten real results? That's the first thing. The top secret of copywriting is like study the masters, is my point
Yes,
about
that's totally
rewatching this
true.
episode.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, copywriting is not the same thing as content writing. Okay. So most people are creators, and they are great at like building content, even building their courses or building blog posts or like doing social media captions, right? Maybe they're really good at that. But content is informational. And it's not that it's not valuable, but it's not copywriting. Copywriting is not informational. It is motivational and inspirational. And it allows people to, it's persuasive, that they want to buy it. It conjures emotion. So the key is like, and this is a little trick that I did in the beginning when I landed in these internet streets back to when I started helping entrepreneurs. I had to really wear 2 different hats, being a former copywriter. So I literally had 2 hats. I had a copywriter hat and I had a content hat. And they don't have to say that it was like 2 different color hats. In fact, one was my copywriting hat was like, I had a serious hat on. I had a San Francisco 49ers hat on because I'm a big 49ers fan. And to me, they're like winners, right? So I'm like, I'm a winner, copywriting, right? And then when I had did content, I would wear my beach hat. Like I was like, oh, I'm being creative right now. I'm teaching things. I feel in flow.
You just embody the feeling inside of you.
Embody the feeling, right? And so I don't know if that's a good little trick for you, but it might help a lot to create some type of embodiment thing. And then finally, a top secret of copywriting is straight up that it's actually really hard. It is a true skill. It is an expertise. So if that's the case and you're beginning, don't let copywriting stop you from sharing what you know. go and hire somebody to help you with it. And I know that's an investment, but copywriting is a mastered skill. But the cool thing is, now that you've learned the framework, the unique message model, you can give them something to start with, because that's the other breakdown is people don't know what to tell their copywriters. And so the copywriters take a crack at it and then they're like, that doesn't sound like me, or that's not what I would have said, right? And it's because you don't have the prep work. So using this will help a great copywriter make you money.
Amazing. All right, guys, you heard those. Those are secrets from somebody who's been in the biz for over 20 years. Now, a question we love asking people here is, if you could go back in time and talk to yourself at the start of the journey, what advice would you have given younger version of you before you started all of this?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I can tell you that I could have done what I did in 3 months instead of 9 months. So, but I didn't know that, right? So if I were going backwards, I would have cut my time off in corporate. So I would have got 6 months of my life back. But I can't, and I don't regret it. You asked me what I would say. I would say, trust the 90 days. You don't need 180 days. Okay. And I also would say that I would tell myself that trust what you already know, because if something goes wrong, you can always go back to it. So in my case, if my business were to fall apart tomorrow, I would just go back to being a copywriter. Back when I was 22 years old and I was working in one of the biggest agencies, I would take all that knowledge and I would just go back to that, because that is always a skill that will be needed in the marketplace. And if I can trust that as my insurance, I can do anything. I can take risks on anything. And I would remind myself that that was possible.
Amazing. I need that for myself. So you just told me something I needed to hear. So I love that. I love doing the show because oftentimes I'm like slowly being mentored by all these people that are experts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. I always attract the people with the message that I need to hear. It's actually really great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. We have learned so much with you here today. I hope everybody here, you've gotten tremendous value. Now, if you really love what you've learned here today, this is not over, because Jen here is a great partner of ours, and she actually built a workshop with us already. And she's going to break down this framework even more with more visuals. And you get the bonus quiz to find out what your archetype mix is. Now, I did it myself. And as you can see here, I didn't really need to do it because Jennifer just told me what it was, and it was bloody accurate because I read through I'm like, okay, this is accurate. So go ahead and check it out in the workshop below. It is free, free, free to get into, and the quiz is free as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for showing up. Thank you, Jem, here, for sharing so much of your deep insights and your vulnerability and your stories and your expertise here.
Thank you so much for having me. So much fun.
I love it. And everybody here, if you really like what you saw today, subscribe to this channel for more expert talks, and give this video a like, and leave us a message here about what you think about your branding and messaging and what you're struggling with here. And try this model out yourself and tell us how it went. I know I'm going to do it for myself as well for my own landing page. All right, guys, till next time. See you again.